roll. Oh, actually, we should turn this on, shouldn't we?
Yeah, probably record the audio.
Let's record the audio. That's pretty good. Ah, there it is. Nailed it. Oh, my days. Well, welcome back to Road Less Travelled, a podcast by Applewood Distillery, where we interview people who are pushing the boundaries in their industry, really. And look, we've got someone with us today who, I mean, yes, he's part of the business. So this is entirely self-serving, and I'm totally okay with that.
That's fine. It's Friday. We're just hanging out having
It's
a glass of
Friday.
wine, all
Oh
that
my
kind
God,
of
let's
shit.
have a glass of wine. So we have the incredible Noah Ward, who is our... Well, how would you define... You're a wine guy.
I'm the wine version of you, mate.
You're the wine... And I'd say I'm the spirits version of you.
Yeah, well, that's it. It goes both ways. But,
Oh, my days.
Yeah, no, I look after the sales of Unico Zello, essentially.
Yeah, you look after the branding.
Yeah.
You look after what we put on our labels.
Yes.
And how we actually go about selling it.
Yeah, pretty much.
And my God, you wear a lot of hats, man. You got
Yeah.
hats on hats on hats.
Hats on hats, and have had many different hats over the course of my almost 7 years with the business now.
Yeah,
which
holy
is
shit.
wild.
So you're the longest serving employee?
Technically, no, but longest serving full-time employee. So Pip, who works
Pip.
at the bar, has
Yeah,
going
yeah.
by a month.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I'm the longest serving full-time employee. I put in the most hours besides Brendan and
Most
Laura and
hours.
Richard as well.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's true. Yeah, 100%. So I tasked Noah today with, there's a few things that I actually want to discuss. And like this podcast, for those who are listening, is going to be mostly about wine in the bartending space.
Yes.
Which I actually really enjoy. Because
I do too.
Because man, I want your opinion on this. Like, I find wine in the bartending space to be the most accessible way to actually talk about wine.
100%.
So-
I completely agree.
So my first big thing that I tasked Noah with was pick a bottle of wine, tell me why we're going to drink it, and I'm really, really excited for what we have, because it's like when I I thought you would be really self-serving about this, and I thought you were going to pick a Unico wine. So I was like, okay, well, I'll bring a bottle of wine to like replace the bottle of Unico that I know we're going to drink. But we're not drinking Unico.
No. Which is also entirely self-serving, because I deal with a lot of Unico Zello. I've drunk a lot of Unico Zello over my 7 years with the business, and also before being with the business, I enjoyed the wines before that. So I drank a lot of Unico.
lot of Unico.
So me being self-serving, we're not drinking Unico.
Yeah, terrific. Which I'm so okay with.
We are drinking the iconic Clonakilla, a wonderful Canberra wine producer, absolutely iconic there. Shiraz Viognier is one of the great wines of Australia.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the 20 odd Langtons classified exceptional wines, and kind of like go into just like, if we're talking about icons of Australian wine, you kind of can't talk about this particular brand. And we're drinking their Shiraz. I don't believe there's any Viognier in this. 2021, which is kind of across the country one of the best vintages we've ever had. This is kind of their, more entry-level style of Shiraz. But it really is Syrah-like. I think they put Shiraz on the label because it's more marketable. We know it as Shiraz in Australia. They're an iconic brand. It makes a lot of sense. But this is way more like cool. Like Canberra's, if you've not been to Canberra, I know you have. It's fucking cold.
Yes, a lot of the time.
It's so cold. It snows not too far away. It's very inland, very continental. So you generally get this like cooler, prettier style. So it's all like raspberries and cherries and plums and like super vibrant and aromatic, and I love this kind of take on Shiraz. And talking about Australian wine, you can't not talk about Shiraz if you're talking about Australian wine. Kind of history,
yeah, for sure. But why? Like, I have a weird question, because like my first introduction to Australian wine was always like, oh, let's talk Shiraz.
Yes,
and I'm pretty sure the very first introduction I ever had was like, let's try this Barossa Valley Shiraz.
Yes.
Which is how everyone kind of gets into it. But why is that the case? Like, if you were to actually talk me through why the fuck we are known for Shiraz, what is that about?
So I think the main thing is that it's a completely different style that, when it became kind of popular and, exciting, it was different to any other style of the grape variety in the world. So,
okay.
Like you've got the it's home to the Northern Rhone in the south, somewhat central southern France, where it kind of looks a little bit like this, really olivey, peppery, pretty, but it's still like alcoholic, like rich, full bodied, has a lot of tannin, a lot of oak and all that kind of stuff. But when you get to Australia, it's like turn the flavor dials up, because the Barossa is a lot hotter. It is, it is a dry and hot area. It is very, very different to the Northern Rhone. So we were able to produce this style of wine that for the grape variety was kind of not seen anywhere else. And, you're thinking about when Barossa Shiraz really became relevant through the 50s and 60s initially, particularly through Penfolds and Grange particularly, alongside Cabernet within that. And then that was such an iconic style that then throughout the 70s, 80s and 90s, the Barossa has just become known for Shiraz because of other grape producers like Torbreck and Henschke, who make the oldest Shiraz vines in the world, I believe.
How old are they?
I believe the Hill of Grace vineyard was planted and still continually planted from like the late 1800s. So yeah, like Australia's home for some of the oldest vines in the world of Shiraz, Grenache, Pinot Meunier here in Victoria.
Yeah, really.
Best Pinot Meunier is the oldest is the oldest Pinot Meunier in the world. So that's the kind of history that we have because we've had some particular parts of Australia, particularly South Australia, has not had phylloxera ever, due to very stringent quarantine rules. It is in Victoria, but they've protected this best vineyard of Pinot Meunier very, very well. Like, if you go there, it's like, you have to change your shoes and shit. It's it's fucking gnarly.
So they basically had COVID restrictions before we ever even knew it.
100%. Yeah. That's exactly what it is. And I've had a few conversations with family members about, like, that like wine that didn't like COVID restrictions. Is like, how we protected this Shiraz and Grenache for over decades by quarantining things really well? And do we agree that old vine Shiraz and Grenache is really, really important?
Yeah.
Like, yes. It's like, well, this is
actually, this is really
we're doing the same thing.
Yeah. I love that.
Anyways, but yeah, I think that's something really cool about Australia is that we've got some amazing old vine heritage, and that's a really unique thing in the history of the world. But yeah, Shiraz became popular because it was something that looked a little bit like Bordeaux while everyone was obsessed with Bordeaux. The whole Parker Points craze of like, it's got to be full alcohol, full tannin, full flavor, full. Like, finesse wasn't necessarily the key driving indicator of what is actually sellable. Like, what people want. People weren't looking for, refreshment and delicacy and detail and things like that. And there's like, nah, fucking flavor.
Yeah, fucking
fruit. Just get it as deep and dark and intense as like all killer, no filler kind of stuff. Yeah. So like that has put Australian wine on the map as well, which is, and it's, we've always talked about Australia being, a very hot, a very dry place, sunburned country, all that kind of thing. So the wines of that era reflected that.
Yeah.
But that's a bit of a, broad sweeping brush to kind of brush Australia with. And this is the antithesis to that,
For sure.
Yeah. Cool climate, pretty delicate. So like lots of herbs and lots of spices and all that kind of stuff. So really, really different.
So when you first were introduced to wine, how did that actually come about? Like, were you first introduced to old wine in general through like going to the pub? Or how did that actually begin? My
early memories have probably been, my family moved to South Australia in the late 90s, like 98. And so, my family's from New South Wales, from Newcastle. So Newcastle, got to go the Knights. They're perennially terrible and have been for many years. So that's where my family's from. I was actually born in Queensland, but we moved to South Australia. So, of course, when you're in South Australia, when you grow up in South Australia, wine is everywhere. Because Adelaide as a city you've got drive 20 minutes, kind of north. Or northeast, really. You got the Adelaide Hills. Drive, 20 minutes south. You've got McLaren Vale. Drive an hour proper north. You got the Barossa, and you keep going. You got Clare. So you're surrounded by these iconic and amazing wine regions. And I was probably dragged to many a cellar door across those, particularly McLaren Vale and probably the Clare Valley as well. It's probably one of my earlier memories since I was a kid. So I've been going to cellar doors as a younger one because my parents like wine. My uncle particularly really enjoys wine. As a Novocastrian from Newcastle, I was everything like almost adjacent to being bottle-fed Hunter Valley Semillon as you could possibly get.
Hold on, Novocastrian?
That's the the Melburnian, the Sydney side,
right.
with the name of a person who's from Newcastle is a Novocastrian.
That's actually sick.
It's pretty cool.
That's actually
it's a pretty good name.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
It's kind of it's been kind of inseminated around me my entire life because being from South Australia, but there's the pub, there's restaurants and stuff like that. So it's always kind of been around.
Yeah, for sure. And like when we were speaking before about how bartenders, like wines in the bartender space are a really beautiful entry point to getting to know more about wine in kind of an environment where you don't have to be an expert, which is what I really love.
No.
Like you're there for pure enjoyment in so many ways. Did you come up through that kind of pure enjoyment space, or did you like cut your teeth, if you will, looking at it from a more technical perspective in terms of wine?
Sheer enjoyment space, absolutely. And like when I was, at 18 and, working in bars and restaurants, as a university student, post-high school kind of thing, I started working in a hotel. They started showcasing a few wines to train the staff and stuff like that. And it's like, at the time, I wasn't really massively interested in wine. We were pouring, stuff like, Tempranillo, which I didn't really enjoy. And like, there was no Pinot Noir by the glass because it's South Australia. I didn't really like a lot of the Shirazes and stuff. But there was a couple of things like, I really enjoyed like Bleasdale Sauvignon Blanc.
Oh, yeah. Let's go.
It's delicious. It's yummy.
Yeah.
But my kind of rise to wine was rise to wine, like kind of my interest in wine kind of started around the natural wine movement. And Adelaide was such a hot spot for that because all of the winemakers out of the hills, and the natural selection theory of James Erskine, Anton von Klopper of Lucy Margot, Tom Shobrook, and the late Sam Hughes. So that was kind of happening in Adelaide at the time, and I was particularly excited by that because everything that I've really enjoyed through life has been a little bit counterculture, skateboarding, punk rock, kind of shit like that. And this whole idea of natural wine seemed like the antithesis to what I knew wine as. Yeah. Commercial, consistent, make the same thing, sell it at this price, it's very simple. It's like, no, we're going to take all the frills off it, move a bit more punk rock, and there's producers like Dakota Barrels who are naming their wines after punk bands. Yeah. So I was like, wow, this is a really exciting thing. So that's kind of what piqued my interest. And as I was working in Adelaide, I was working, particularly when I was really, really getting into it and learning a lot more, I was working at a restaurant called Peel Street on the eponymous Peel Street of Adelaide CBD, with the best restaurants going around, still going, absolutely amazing. A few doors down was the Bar Club Little Taylor, which is, one of Adelaide's kind of longest enduring small bars and, something that's been run so well for a long period of time. And the bar manager there, Al, who's now running Sunny in Hobart.
Such a good wine bar.
Yeah, it's one of the best wine bars in the world.
Such a good wine bar.
One of the best wine bars in Australia. So good. He loves wine and always had a really good by the glass offering. And he structured his wine list, probably something that I've always remembered because I thought it was just such a really great way to get people that were both comfortable and interested in wine, excited about the list, and also people that just wanted a fucking glass of wine. Excited. And he structured it like, whites or reds, you have a 10 by the glass options. You got two sparklings, one which is, house pour for spritzers like Prosecco, and you get a good champagne on. Then you have a rosé. If you want to chuck in an orange wine, absolutely. Yeah. And then you got your whites and your reds, you got 3 of each. And for the whites and reds, you've got to go one light, one heavy, one weird.
Yeah, cool.
Which is great.
That's such a good structure.
It's so good. It's just like something refreshing. So you got a Riesling, something a bit more full bodied. So you got a Chardonnay, and then fuck it, let's chuck on an Italian grape variety, or Chenin Blanc, or something a little bit different and, kind of a bit of a curveball. And that was really exciting. So I was going that, since it was just down the road from Peel Street, that was the obvious knockoff spot. And every time I walked in, the guys, like Al, and then there was Louis as well, and all the people there were just pouring really interesting wines. And basically, like, I was walking in and then there's so many great experiences, where Al saw me roll in. It's like, hey, I've got all the leftover samples from when Bravely Wine were here. I've got 14 wines. Yes. Oh, the dregs. Would you like to taste them all? It's like, fuck yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I remember they saw me walk in one day and they had this one bottle open. They were like, you sit down here, poured me a glass, and they were like, this is carbonically macerated Agliatico from Lazio in Italy. It's Lacoste. It's fucking delicious. And that one of my favorite wines I've ever had ever. Yeah. So that, like, stuff like that, they were really good at fostering my knowledge. And then through that, I was able to try wines from people like Unico Zello, and then eventually started working for them.
Yeah. Holy shit.
So I would not have been able to learn about wine the way I did without bartending and bar style wine lists.
Yeah. Cool. It's a really beautiful way just into what wine can be and the story that wine can tell. Because I feel like, and this is something that I've talked about like quite a bit, which is one of the main differences that I find between wine and the appreciation of wine and the appreciation of spirits is that when you sit down and you're at a bar, like let's say you're at a wine bar, you're not at a restaurant, you're at a wine bar, and they're going through the list with you, and you'll be like, hey, you might ask a question.
Yeah.
When the person then sits down with you and talks to you about the wine, they're going to tell you what year it was made, when it was made, how good that year was, where it comes from, who the farmers are, and then they're going to start talking about the technique involved in order to turn it into the wine that it is.
Yes.
But in spirits, we pretty much fuck all of the farming part off. And we go like, so this was distilled with blah. And that's where the story kind of begins. And there's this beautiful kind of connection to landscape, connection to terroir, and that beautiful story of time and place that occurs in wine that doesn't really occur in spirits.
Yeah, for the most part. Of course, there's exceptions to the rule. Sure. We'll talk about mezcal and things like that, which is like a bit more different and things like that. But yeah, exactly. And that was probably why I was more attracted to wine than I was spirits. I still really enjoy spirits. I work for a gin distillery. Like I really love the gin. I've sold plenty of Applewood over my times. I used to run the Applewood bar. Like, I really enjoy that kind of thing, but I was always more attracted to the wine side of things because I've always loved that you get to encapsulate a people, a place, a time, and a culture in a bottle.
In something that is living as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's like listening to a great album. It's just like, the year was 1991.
Yeah.
And Nirvana came out with Nevermind and it changed the fucking world.
Yeah,
You can just be like, the year was 2016 and this is a coat of barrels, Graffiti Galaxy, Grenache, and it changed the fucking world. Like, shit like that.
I really thought you were about to start talking about like Oyster Bay and Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc.
But yeah, 100% changed the world.
It did.
I've heard stories of like containers of that stuff being like bartered over. Like, it's like, I want that container now. I'll pay an extra 50 grand to get that fucking shit. Like, there is some insane stories around that kind of stuff as well.
So you've grown from working in Adelaide. You're now big dog Unico Zello, which I fucking love. And you get to travel pretty darn extensively. Like you've been overseas quite a lot this year.
Yes.
Do you feel like there's a spiritual home of natural wine, or do you feel like there's like a spiritual home of wine in general across the world? Or do you think that like, there are these little movements that pop up, just like music, right?
Yes.
It's like, this is actually neo-punk, and it comes from Oregon.
Yeah.
And that's like
hardcore punk, DC, 1980s, Dead Kennedys.
Right?
Bad Brains and shit.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you feel like there's a home of natural wine, or somewhere where you feel at home in natural wine?
I think there's many different homes. I think, of course you have to talk about the Loire Valley and, Nicolas Joly and what he did with Shannon. He's called the godfather of natural wine.
Oh, probably for a really good reason.
For a really good reason. It's all about farming. He's like what he's done.
It's all about farm.
It's all about the farm. So, there's so many different pockets. I don't think there's one. And I think that's the great thing about wine. There's all these different pockets of movements, and you can go to like the Adelaide Hills is probably one of the world's greatest, in my personal opinion, because that probably brought that methodology to the southern hemisphere, probably a bit further, and of course to Australia, which is in the one of the top wine consuming countries in the world, and one of top wine producing countries as well. So as that was being kind of referenced and talked about across there's the Loire Valley, and you've got the Rhone, you've got all these other different appellations and things like that were Jura, of course, as well,
my God,
which is a massive one. So you've got all these different little pockets, and you can talk about Italy, you can talk about Spain, you can talk about the United States as well. You can talk about Chile, like all of these different little pockets. There's no one, and that's still the story of wine. You're still talking about these many different places. But I was lucky enough to grow up in Adelaide, around one of the Australia's example of that, which is the Adelaide Hills, which is really, really cool.
Now, since you've been traveling quite a lot this year, has there been like a place that's really inspired you so far? In terms of the world of wine?
In the world of wine, I think still one of my favourite wine places to go and be is the UK.
Yeah, okay. Why is that?
Because it's not known for producing wine greatly, even though the sparklings coming out of there are fucking off their head. They are like, if you can afford them, they're very expensive, but they're absolutely unbelievable. So there's some really exciting stuff going on there. But what I love about the UK is that since it's historically not a major player in the world of wine, but they're so close to France, they're so close to Italy, they're so close to Germany and all that kind of different stuff. So you go there, and since all of the wine regions there, like around them, that they've had, in their market for such a long period of time, are all appellated. So they know that Sancerre is Sauvignon Blanc. They know that Burgundy is Pinot Noir or Chardonnay. They know that, Hermitage is Syrah. You go to Australia and you showcase Sancerre to someone who doesn't know anything about wine. They're like, so what's this Sancerre? And then you have to go, it's Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah.
Whereas the UK, the level of wine knowledge is just that little bit higher than everybody else's, because you had this European education, mainland European education through there, which is, I think, really, really cool. And you go there and it's just like, oh my God, I know nothing.
Yeah.
Like, everyone's so much more knowledgeable of you. Like, your average, wine sales rep has a higher level of education than someone that's based here does.
Right.
And so there's such a level of pre-known and knowledge that the level is so much higher. So it's a really challenging kind of market to be in and exist. But that being said, if you showcase something interesting and different and good, the excitement is a lot more there.
Yeah, for sure.
The problem with the UK right now is the economic stuff. So then they're less committed to those kind of things as well, because the average punter is just like really set in their ways and doesn't have the financial ability to kind of go out of their comfort zone.
Yeah.
Which is reflective all around the world, even in Australia and in places like the US and stuff like that. But for me, like, as far as like a place to go and visit for wine, I really, really love the UK. I really love Singapore as well.
Why Singapore?
That's got one of the most dynamic food scenes in the world.
Yeah, that's so true.
Like, which you've got, the hawker halls where you can eat some like amazing food for like $5.
Yeah.
But then you can also go to like some of the best fucking restaurants in the world.
Yeah.
It is such a dynamic food scene, which is really, really cool. The structure of the city's fun. It's a really good time. It's, it's a really interesting place to go. But then again, it's also like some of the places that I'm also getting inspired by is just like the emerging places. Like I went to Vietnam late last year, not necessarily for work, but I made it at work. Because we've been able to sell some wine over there. But they're only just having the ability to get these, to get natural wine in their country.
Right.
Okay. Because it's such a marginal place. We haven't thought about it as a place where you can sell wine, because wine sales generally equals pretty solidified middle class.
Yeah, okay.
Because, lower class kind of generally, there's people that have a bit less kind of money to spend, generally spend their money on beer and spirits.
Yeah, right.
That's again, a very broad brush to paint, but that's what generally happens is, but then you look at places like Vietnam and India as well, where both countries are having massive booms of the middle class, and then wine consumption and wine interest is really increasing because it's known as a status symbol. So if you've got a little bit more expendable income, you start reaching towards wine over beer. Because beer is everyman, all that kind of thing. So then now wine is a little bit more status driven. So going to Vietnam was really exciting because there is that, they're still kind of growing as an economic powerhouse. Ho Chi Minh City is going to be like Singapore in 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
It's going to be fucking crazy.
That's a hot take. That's a super hot take.
You go there and you see it. Because there's like, skyscrapers and all that kind of stuff going on, surrounded by the kind of classic, old quarter that, of course, the French influence and stuff like that that's there. And it's been a very interesting country over the last 100 years plus. But what's happening now that I went to Vietnam's first natural wine bar. All of these great restaurants are having, interesting wine lists and stuff like that. So there is this it's not just isolated to now like the Sofitels and the crazy high-end hotels with great restaurants. It's actually going out to bars and other places as well. It's not just drinking Saigon 333 beers or Cuda beer. In some places, there is a little bit more of that kind of thing. So that's really exciting for me, is watching these countries starting to, have a bit more of a wine presence and the excitement from the communities there. Because, you look at people in Vietnam, they've grown up with, Vietnamese food and Vietnamese culture their entire life. And they, of course, they're very passionate about it, but they're really interested in the rest of the world. Yeah. And now we have this global kind of thing where now everyone can look at the rest of the world through their fucking phone. Yeah, true. So they've seen, Action Bronson on YouTube talking about natural wine and traveling through France and trying this stuff. They've heard about what's happening in Australia. And a lot of these people are going to universities in Australia as well.
Oh, right, yeah.
And also you've got Japan as well, which is kind of, one of the hotspots for a lot of this, throughout Asia. People go to Japan and go to these interesting bars and, creative experiences because, there's these great natural wine bars like a Vuri store that are kind of iconic. They go there, have these experiences, fall in love, and then want to bring it back to their own country.
Yeah,
and do that there and have that kind of add to the cultural, diversity of that country, which is really interesting. That Vietnam was really exciting in that aspect.
Yeah, 100%. Holy shit. Well, I mean, now that you've said like it's going to be like Singapore in the next 10, 15, I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm going Ho Chi Minh, baby.
That's what I'm saying to people now is like go to Vietnam before it doesn't become like the Vietnam you've like watched on Anthony Bourdain documentaries. Where because it's probably not going to be that for much longer. And, it has changed a lot in the last, probably 15, 20 years and stuff like that, which is, it's just changing. It's not necessarily a better or worse thing, but the whole it's going to be entirely different. And it's maybe the greatest food country in the entire world. It's fucking unbelievable.
Yeah, holy shit. So you did touch on just before the kind of problems that we're having in the economy.
Yeah,
and the global economy to a certain extent as well. How are we seeing that come through in the wine game globally and also in Australia? How's that feeding through?
It's really interesting because basically this is what's happening now is we are now being forced to deal with a problem that we've been kind of sweeping under the rug for decades.
What's the problem that we've
got too much fucking wine.
Oh.
We produce too much wine. We grow too many grapes.
Okay.
And that's not just Australia, that's the world. Like, you look at the Languedoc-Roussillon, they've reduced their vineyard plantings by 25% over the last 20 years. So, so their big bulk region, which is bigger than, like, our biggest bulk region, I believe, in the Riverland, they're going, like, we've got too much wine, we need to shrink it. So the wine business and industry is now moving towards like a bit more of a premium offering because like no one wants to buy cheap wine anymore. Okay. Because I think now there is so many different things happening all at once, which is so fascinating. So one is like there is a bit more of a health conscious movement. So instead of having wine every day, they're choosing to have it on maybe 3 nights a week rather than 7 nights a week. So there's a bit more of a holistic view of alcohol and drinking it like infrequently rather than making it part of your day, which I think is probably for the best. But now it's not.
I mean, not for us, but yeah, I completely understand.
100%. But it's also like the $10 bottle of wine is not a competitive space anymore. Because it's like no one wants to buy it. Everyone's happy to spend. Instead of buying 3 to 4 bottles of $10 to $15 wine. $10 to $15 bottles of wine a week. They're buying buying 3 or 4 of those throughout the week. They're buying maybe 1 to 2 bottles of $25 to $30 bottle of wine. So they're spending the same amount of money, but over less bottles. Okay. So now we have this thing where we have too many bottles because no one's buying them.
Right.
So that's really affecting the large play of the industry, which is, in Australia we have, the Riverland, which is where we get a lot of our fruit for Unico Zello. We also have the Riverina and the Murray-Darling across New South Wales and Victoria. So those regions are going, we have too much bloody wine. Yeah. And the reason we have all of those wines is because all of these big multinational companies with these mega portfolios that produce millions upon millions of bottles every single year can't sell them all. Okay. Because for, like in more, developed countries, people are drinking less. In Australia, a big one is also, of course, China with the trade tariffs as well. Yeah. That were imposed because Scott Morrison really pissed them off, which was really good. Really, really good. Just great. That it worked so well. So that really affected them. And then we had all of this wine that no one wanted anywhere else in the world. Yeah. And so, because, to be frank, these big companies, they were dumping this wine in China to reduce the cost because they had been dealing with an oversupply for a long period of time.
Right. Okay. So they were dumping, in your opinion, as no one
allegedly, but they're fucking doing it. Like it's just there's plenty of evidence of seeing top end products from very reputable Australian producers being sold over there a lot cheaper than it was in the rest of the world.
Right. Okay.
So that's that's dumping. That is it's a bit of a no-no. Basically that was the justification from China to then say we're going to import this, have this tariff on the sales of Australian wine here, which really affected like these businesses. But they just decided to pass the problem down the line, and it's so they're not taking the thing or it's like, oh, we just need to. They've just gone, well, we need to make less wine, so that means the growers that we've over the last 15 years have made them plant more grapes. We're charging this price per ton. We've got these big long contracts. It's like, we're just not going to take the wine anymore. And that's like, and then so the growers are like, well, what the fuck do I do?
Yeah.
Because nobody else wants this. So now I have these giant farms with a lot of fruit, and then I can't even sell it below the cost that it takes to produce the wine. So they're like leaving vineyards for dead. They're dropping fruit. And then many of them are, walking away from the game. Just going like, I can't farm this anymore. Yeah. So now this isn't an isolated thing. No. I was, on, just on YouTube kicking, and I saw this video from the ABC pop up saying like, vineyard owners walking away from from vineyards because they can't sell the fruit. And I was like, oh yeah, cool. That must be a pretty recent video. No, it was 13 years ago that this came out. And this is in the Barossa. So this has happened before. Yeah. And we've had this problem for so long that we are just producing too much wine, because wine has been a very highly profitable product for a long period of time. Yeah. Because, the cost of a bottle to make is, between $1 and $5. And beyond, depending on the quality of the fruit and the cost that you have on your packaging and things like that. And then you sell at retail for $30. That's a big margin. Yeah. So it's a great growth product. But now it's like, as the thing's in decline, and since it's an agricultural product, of course the people that are wearing the brunt of the downfall is the farmers. Yeah. Which is great. Which is really, really good. Top. So that is a key thing that's kind of going on in the Australian wine industry and around the world. Of course, in France, America is having the same thing as well, and like in California in the Central Valleys and Lodi, which is their big producing regions. Is
there anything that farmers can actually do to stop large companies behaving this way? Like, for example, could they like unionize, or that's probably a dirty word for anyone in the national scene? But are there examples overseas where like there's farmers unions? Not iced coffee, but farmers.
Well, the method that we have in the wine industry is cooperatives.
Oh,
which is basically, if you have excess fruit, you give it to a cooperative producer. They purchase the fruit and they turn it into bulk producing wine, and then they sell that at a pretty reasonable price point, and that's your bistro wine, that's your pub wine, your stuff like that. So that's a method that exists, a thing that exists in France and Spain and Italy, and a lot of these are actually grower owned. As well, which is, so a lot of them have, like, the key stakeholders are the farmers. So they are reliant on these cooperatives as well. But that now is coming to a head where a lot of these, they're still producing too much wine, so they still have to dealing with the cost side of things of that. Right. But that method works because there is a grower incentive there. It actually works for the farmers. Where in Australia, we don't really have that model. Yeah. We've had people try to introduce it, and then the government says they can't do it because for tax reasons and a whole bunch of different things like that.
What are do you know what the tax reasons are?
Well, so for example, for Unico, we set one up
because we had
harvest, which was basically fruit. Growers donated the fruit, we sold the wine, and then we split the profits with the growers 50-50. And then basically the ATO said that was too much of a complex problem, too much of a complex basically way of how that works for them to kind of understand and.
So the ATO were like, that's too complex.
Please stop doing this. Essentially.
Oh god. Yeah.
Okay. And there was there's other reasons why that happened as well, but it was too complicated tax wise with the wet system and growers claiming wet tax with the fruit. So there was the system wasn't built for it, so the ATO just said, like, please don't do it.
Jesus Christ.
Which is a bit of a shame because like that model works globally.
Yeah,
but we just don't have
empowers farmers, right?
Exactly, but we just don't have a system here. But what's happening now is that there's a few government-led incentives to look after the growers who want to exit the industry,
Right.
and it's either exit the industry or convert to a different grape varieties as well.
Or different grape varieties.
Different crop. Well, as of very recently, in the Riverland, grapes are now no longer the number one planted species.
What's the number one planted species?
It's a very good one, mate. It's very good, particularly in an El Nino season, and in our country, number one species planted in the Riverland is almonds, which is known as one of the most thirsty plants in the history of the world. Where the average almond costs 5 litres of water. Yeah. One almond, 5 litres of water.
In the driest continent on Earth.
Yes, in the driest state on the driest continent on Earth. Which is, but I can understand why farmers do it, because the value you get from almonds is really high.
Yeah.
And particularly over the last few years, since it's been quite wet, which is starting to come to an end, because we're moving into a bit more of dry season. And throughout this year, it's been very dry. I went back to the hills and McLaren Vale over the last couple of months, and it was just brown.
Yeah.
During May, and it's generally it's pretty lush green by this point. It's there's been no rain, so which is pretty scary now thinking about this. But we've had a lot of rain over the last few years, so there's a lot of water, and water therefore is cheap. We have a very fluctuating model of how the water is priced.
Right.
And there's also privatization of water as well. So there is, planting of almonds. They can use the water to build up their crop, which which works. And since water's cheap, it's good. But then now water's going to get more expensive.
Yeah.
So that's going to increase the cost of production, and then that's going to increase the price of almonds, and then the sales are going to go down, and we're going to go through this ebb and flow. So
love a good sign graph.
Yeah, it's almonds. I really don't like that we're planting a whole bunch of it, but but there are a lot of people encouraging it, and I can understand why farmers do it, because you get good value.
Yeah.
And grapes were kind of the next best thing, because cost of farming was low and the return of investment was high.
Yeah.
But now that's ceasing to change as the prices per ton of Shiraz have dipped below $300.
Yeah, well, 100%.
In warm inland regions.
Right. So how do you think we're going to see the Australian wine industry change in the next 10, 15 years?
We're going to move.
And also, sorry to interrupt,
no,
how do you hope it's going to change?
So,
and are those two things aligned? Are you a realist, or are you a little bit more aspirational?
I'm a big realist. I'm a massive realist. I'm a fucking... Yeah.
Cool, man.
Yeah. So what I hope that happens is that we move to we reduce the amount of wine we produce every year. We create a bit more of a diverse... yes, please. We move to a bit more of a diverse agricultural system, whereas you look at Australia, we have warm regions, we have cool regions. And in warm regions, what do we grow?
Grape-wise?
Yes.
Oh, in warm regions, we grow Shiraz.
Yes. In cold regions, what do we grow?
Chardonnay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. So correct. So if it is a hot region, you grow Shiraz. If you have a cold region, you grow Pinot Noir and Chardonnay.
Right. Okay.
Things like that. Go to France. That is not necessarily the case. You go to Burgundy, there's Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. You go to Champagne, there's Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, but it's made a different way. You go to Loire Valley, it's Sauvignon Blanc, Cabernet Franc, there's Pinot de Nice, there's Chenin Blanc, things like that. You go to the south of France, you've got Shiraz, you've got Grenache, you've got Marsanne Roussanne, Viognier.
Sancerre.
Sancerre, absolutely, yum. You go to, even further south into the Languedoc-Roussillon, you've got Picpoul and things like that. You've got Rosé and Provence. You've got Jura, where you've got Chardonnay and Pinot, but you've also got Savagnin and Trousseau and Poussard, all of these different. So that's one country that is smaller than Australia, having a very, very diverse map of different regions with different identities. And then we can get into Italy, which is a whole different kettle of fish, which is way more diverse. And then you've got Spain as well, and you've got Germany, which is definitely synonymous for Riesling, but it's also got emerging stuff as well. Whereas in Australia, we have a really big country with a lot of different wine-producing regions, and they generally fit into different boxes. Shiraz or Pinot Noir / Chardonnay.
Yeah.
So we're in Victoria, Yarra Valley.
Pinot Noir.
Mornington Peninsula.
Pinot Noir and Chardonnay.
We got Geelong.
Pinot Noir.
Yeah, so
yeah.
So we have a very, very yeah, but that's Victoria. And then you go to South Australia, it's similar. You go to Western Australia, there's more this Chardonnay, and you got Cabernet and things like that. So what I hope is that we find more identity as an Australian wine producing country.
Right. Okay.
So I hope that, for me, I hope that Victoria leans into, you know, a bit more of that. I like the cool climate stuff from Victoria. I think, you know, what we're doing, Pinot Noir and Chardonnay is really, really good. I like the Syrah, I like Cabernet here. Riesling is fantastic. I think that really makes a lot of sense. Tasmania, I think we should definitely kind of make that as a great premium sparkling and Pinot Noir region. I think that makes a lot of sense. New South Wales, I don't know. Like, honestly, like,
Wow.
I mean, they make a lot of great Chardonnay and things like that, but it's a very small producing, it's not necessarily a famous wine producing state in the context of the world. South Australia, I think we need to move a little bit more to, depending on the region as well. I think what the Clare Valley is doing, they've got such a great identity that's different to the rest of the country with Riesling. And we've got Adelaide Hills, which I think really needs to have a look at what it's growing, because, you know, we've got Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, but it's not as good as Southern Victoria. Sorry, all of my mates in the Adelaide Hills. A lot of fantastic wines come from there. But I think the area of Victoria is better for those particular grape varieties, in my personal opinion. And there is a lot of fun, like, grape producers of those varieties in the hills that agree with that. But I think that, you know, McLaren Vale should really lean into, and they are, into a bit more of that kind of warmer climate alternative-ish varieties, or Italian grape varieties, which is now why Grenache is kind of the flavour of the month there. Not flavour of the month, but I think produces some of the greatest examples of that variety in the world.
Oh, for sure.
And then the number one white grape variety growing there is Fiano.
Really?
The number one white grape in McLaren Vale is Fiano, which is That's
great.
And then it's grown in the hills, it's grown in Clare, it's grown in the Riverland. I think we just need to have a bit more diversity and kind of regional identity that's different from the rest of the country. So we just can't go. But I think we work as a wine kind of marketing industry where we just go, these are the things we're known for.
For sure.
And it's just, it doesn't compete with the rest of the world. Why would you buy Australian Pinot Noir that they've had to, in the UK, that you've had to transport around the world, which is expensive here. Like the average bottle of Pinot Noir in the Mornington Vintage is like $45-50. Retail Australian. Send that overseas to the UK, it's north of 100.
Yeah, well.
Or, you know, you get into the pound side of things after tax and stuff like that. And then they can just go, well, I can just buy Bourgogne Rouge for, you know, like, you know, or something like that. But probably not anymore. But I can pay somewhere in the, like, for a good Australian Pinot Noir, I can pay the same price for Burgundy, which is better.
Yeah.
That's undisputable, in my personal opinion. But I think, having a bit more of an identity, and I really hope we lean into more climatically appropriate varieties. And that's not necessarily just because it's like Italian and the Unicosello side of things. I think that we've found the right varieties for the the growing regions that we work with. I think that Fiano and Nerodabla make a lot of sense in the Riverland. I think Grenache works there as well. And there's a bunch of other things there as well. I think the Clare Valley, I think Riesling's really cool there, but I think, you know, things like Sangiovese are really exciting. And that's, I think, what we really need to work on with the hills. I think there's a few different grapes that we could work in with there that are really exciting.
So is it about grape selection, or is it about, like, when I think of French wine, I think appellation. That's kind of what I go to first, and I think Côte de Rhône. Right? When you're drinking a great Châteauneuf du Pape, Châteauneuf du Pape is not one varietal. It's a beautiful blend of several different varietals.
Yes.
Is there a way, like, do you believe that, like, when we're talking about the future of Australian wine, you want to see more individual varietals in incredible zones of terroir? Or are you like, well, maybe McLaren Vale can be known for a specific blend that doesn't fit into the AOC or DOCG model?
If we can get someone to, if we could find a producer that's able to create something that, like, create this blend that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world, and produce an incredible, like, you know, press reviewed style of wine that doesn't exist anywhere else. Like, you know, if we get, like, you know, James Suckling giving 100 points to a Pickpool Fiano blend from McLaren Vale, like, that is something that we could use as a new watermark, because that's what happened with the Barossa when we had Grange, which is a Shiraz Cabernet blend, which for the most part doesn't really exist in France. Because, you know, Cabernet's from Bordeaux and Syrah's from the southern part of the Rhone, from the Rhone Valley. And but we don't have that in this. We have, you know, kind of these mimicky things in Australia where there's like, and the market here, since we're not really versed in appellation, is very specific to variety.
Variety.
We are a variety-driven consuming country. And since we're, you know, if you're an Australian producer, you look at kind of selling in your own backyard first. So you're kind of working with the market there.
Yeah, yeah.
I would love to see, like, if that was to happen, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. That's the future.
Do you think you've kind of already sort of maybe started, like, you've lit the fuse with something like Esoterica?
I mean, I think...
Like,
yeah, I
kind
think...
of?
Not to pump our own...
Hot take.
Not to pump our own gas, but, you know, like...
Totally can.
Yeah, fuck it.
Yeah.
You know, we've got 1940s bush vine, musket of Alexandria or Zabibo grown in the middle of the desert. That is the oldest terroir in the world. That's, you know, the soil itself is billions of years old.
Yeah.
Like, that is a unique wine story. But I think it's a particularly unique wine, and I think it's, you know, it's our most successful wine. It's very successful in Australia. People are very excited about it. You know, it works really well in the US, the UK, you know, across Asia as well. So people are really excited about the wine, but we're asking for a big generational shift to be like, orange wine, terroir of Australia. That is a big paradigm shift.
That's a big paradigm shift.
I mean, if there's more people out there ready to champion it, like, and kind of help with this movement, I think that would be really exciting. Because that's our belief. I think, you know, since, you know, the wines work well, the fruit works well in the climate. The wine it produces is delicious. It works with the Australian food narrative as well, and kind of our influence and the position that we are in the world, because we are Oceania, we're part of that kind of Australasia aspect, and you go to any pub in the country and it's got a Cantonese dish on it.
Yeah, for sure.
In salt and pepper squid.
Yeah.
Which is only better with Chinese five spice.
100%.
And we've had history of Chinese migration to Australia before Lieutenant Cook ever rocked up here.
Lieutenant Cook?
He was
lieutenant.
He was posthumously named a captain after he was eaten in Tahiti.
Yeah, in Tahiti. Yeah, true.
Yeah, Lieutenant Cook.
No.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
It's good. So, like, that's a really interesting story that we can tell. And I think we've got this great position in the in our part of the world where we can provide wines for those foods.
Yeah, well,
so if we're a great wine producing region, we can send these, you know, wines that work with spicy foods and super aromatic dishes up to, you know, Malaysia and Singapore and Hong Kong and Vietnam and things like that. And we can even send it over there. Hell yeah, fuck yeah. Like, all of these kind of really we should be able to kind of say, if you're eating spicy food, you should be drinking orange wine.
Oh, for real. Oh, my days, yes.
Germany's got quite a few years of history on it, very sweet reason, but in my personal opinion, if you're having something super spicy, it kind of overpowers the reason. Yeah, don't get me wrong, I love German Riesling, prom till I die.
Straight up. What's up?
But I think orange wine. I literally did a tasting on Tuesday, which was all orange wines.
Yes, yeah.
And someone brought like super spicy salami, and we were all eating the salami and then drinking the wine. It's like, fuck, like, this works so well.
Yeah.
With all of these wines. Yeah, exactly. It's got the acid to cut through the fat, and the spice works well with that kind of aromatic, almost oxidative influence to the wine. So, yeah, that would be really cool.
Okay, so blends, that would be sick. But let's say you get to pick one varietal, and well Giroistic here, so it can be any varietal.
Yeah.
I think I know what you're going to say.
Yeah.
But I want to see if I'm right.
Yeah.
You get to pick one varietal to take around the world and melt people's faces with what you can produce with it in Australia. What would that varietal be? It can either be planted, like it can already have a planting, or you can be like, nah, this is what I
think it's Fiano.
You think it's Fiano?
I think it's Fiano. What were you going to say?
I was going to say Nerello Mascalese, man.
We don't have a volcano that's active and erupting many times a year to grow it on. So I love Nerello. It's coming to Australia. I think it's really exciting to see what it can do in Australia. We do have great volcanic areas where we could probably plant it and produce that similar style.
What if Hunter became known for Nerello Mascalese? Would that even work?
I would be very curious. I would be very curious.
You see what I mean?
The Hunter shouldn't even exist in the wine region. And
I know.
I'm from Newcastle. I don't the fact that it works is is just one of the world, like the great wine uniquities.
Yeah.
Like we've taken Semillon from Bordeaux
Yeah.
and put it in maybe one of the most humid places to grow wine. And then you make it and it's 10.5% alcohol with searing acidity.
Yeah.
And then it's just got charging, like it lives forever.
Yeah.
And it's delicious. And then if you had given that to someone maybe 50 years ago, it's like, I've got a bottle of Hunter Valley Semillon, and they'd only tried Semillon from Bordeaux, in a dry style, but blended with Sauvignon Blanc as well, and that's their knowledge of fucking Semillon. And then you give them a glass of Hunter Valley Semillon, and like, this is an entirely different thing.
Yeah.
So that's why that's powerful, because it is an entirely different thing.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's a very unsexy style. It's very unsexy. I think it's delicious. I think it's really cool. I think the problem with it is that you have to age it till it becomes, sometimes it becomes actually drinkable.
Yeah.
Because it can taste like battery acid when you first try it.
Yeah, that's not fun.
So Nerello and Hunter, maybe not.
Maybe not. Yeah.
I think Nerello in Mount Gambier would be fun because there's a lot of volcanic soil there.
Yeah.
I think even Mornington, because there's a lot of volcanic stuff down there, and it's in that cool region. It's got that coastal influence, similar to something like Sicily, but it's not as hot.
Yeah.
I think maybe McLaren Belt might be a good shout, even though it's not volcanic stuff, but it could work. I'd like to see it in those kind of more like sandy clay mixes, which exist there. But it's a really I'm not entirely sure about Nerello.
Yeah.
But it's a great variety. Makes amazing wine.
Really does.
But it's really exciting to see what it could do in Australia.
But Fiano is what you would take overseas to melt people's faces.
Yep.
Why? Why Fiano?
I think mainly because it's a great variety that, maybe not a lot of people know about. Okay. So you're already providing something interesting.
Sure.
Then you've also got, but you can also lean towards, Southern Italian examples of it from Campania that are, in my opinion, some of the world's greatest wines.
Yeah.
Like textural, salty, high acid, can age forever. Like beautiful wines. But, again, not many people have heard of it because, when people think of Italy, they're more attracted to Tuscany and Piemonte and things like that as far as like the iconic red wines. So people prefer red wine from Italy, generally speaking.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, Sangiovese is the most widely planted grape variety across the country.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
So by quite an extensive margin as well.
Yeah.
I think those two particular regions in Tuscany and Piemonte and Chianti have a bit more of that brand presence, so people are more naturally attracted to that. And white wines, people will go to, I guess, Sancerre and Burgundy and things like that, which I get.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
But
Fiano, they go to like German Riesling. Even though I tell you what, there's some Pinot Gris from like the north of Italy near Slovenia.
Oh, yeah.
Tighter than duck's nuts.
So good. Absolutely.
Fucking amazing.
Really, really cool. And you also got to think about that Fiano's got a really short history as well.
Why? What is it of a short history?
It was rescued from near extinction on Pompeii. It was nearly wiped out by the volcanic eruption on Pompeii. Luckily, the Mastroberardino family. I can't remember the Mastroberardino guy that saved. I can't remember his first name. I know his last name is Mastroberardino.
Wait, hold on. That's his last name, Mastroberardino.
Mastroberardino.
I thought you were actually calling him Mastro Berardino.
Yeah, no, that's his last name, I believe.
Okay, that's his last name.
So he rescued that, then propagated it, widely planted it on his, area, produced wine, and that became, I think, maybe one of the first few DOCG white wines of Italy.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like Soave, that, and a few other different things.
Yeah, wow.
So that's really exciting. And then, so that kind of emerged, and people got excited by that. And there was a particular guy that went over there in the 90s that was curious on it.
Yeah.
His name is Mark Lloyd. He's from a winery in South Australia called Corio. So he went over there, and the reason he wanted to make Fiano in Australia was because he just wanted to make something that was distinctively not French. Which is great because, in Australia, like, we're such a Francophile-inspired area where...
Especially in wine.
Excluding Riesling, all we think about is French grapes.
But even then, Riesling is Alsatian.
Alsace, yeah, exactly. It has that, German-French quasi-link there as well.
Yeah.
But
Well, it's the same like the south of France being owned by the Italians up until 500 years
Well,
ago.
the fact that we call
So,
it
like-
the fact that we call it Grenache is also the most Francophilian thing as well, because
Yeah,
it's actually Garnacha. It's from
Garnacha.
Spain.
Yeah.
And that's another thing.
Anyway, a lot of people took over a lot of people.
Yes. It's a lot of fighting in Europe.
Yeah.
So that was brought into Australia in 2001. It was planted and then released in, I think, 06 was the first proper release.
Yeah.
And then Coriol has become very, very synonymous for Italian grapes as well over the last 20 years. And Fiano's been their kind of guiding light, which I think is really exciting. And it grows fantastically well in McLaren Vale, and it's emerged as the key white variety of the region.
Yeah.
But then you take it out of that particular place and you put it in the Riverland, which is hotter and drier and sandier, and it looks awesome.
Yeah.
Put it in a cooler region like the Adelaide Hills, and it also looks awesome. You put it in, the Clare Valley looks great. I've tried Margaret River stuff. I tried Gippsland stuff. Hunter Valley Fiano.
Hey!
Yes,
he is.
Murray Bateman Fiano.
Yeah, wow.
It's kind of gone to a lot of different wine regions, because I think particularly is that the style of wine suits the Australian palate. It's dry, it's textural, it's unoaked. It kind of, because, if you think about this in a post-1990s era when people were hating on Chardonnay and were just like, I want something that's not oaky, anything but Chardonnay. Glass of Chablis, please.
Yep.
Glass of champagne, please.
So true.
But they were like, this is refreshing and textural and interesting. It's not sweet like Riesling, but even though they thought it was Riesling wasn't sweet. It's kind of like Pinot Gris. So there's a lot of grape varieties in Australia that have had marred histories by the consumer as far as we hate that. Riesling equals sweet, Chardonnay equal oaky buttery. We hate those. So Fiano kind of was born out of the ashes of that alongside it with Pinot Gris and Sauvignon Blanc as well.
Yeah, of course.
But what Fiano has kind of done is now become now people in Australia, you go, this is a Fiano. They go, oh yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Go to New Zealand, no fucking idea what it is.
Really?
No fucking idea.
Oh, that's fucking sick.
It's wild. The amount of times I doing consumer tasting events in New Zealand and trying to explain what Fiano is it's challenging.
Yeah.
Because it's Italian. I don't know any other Italian white grapes.
People would know Fiano as Suave. They wouldn't.
It's Garganega.
Oh, it's Garganega.
Yeah, it's a different one.
It's a different one.
Yeah, it's a different grape variety. Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah.
And that shows you how much I know about wine. Complete enthusiast, not professional.
So yeah, that's really interesting. But now in Australia, it's kind of people know, which is really cool. But what I like about it is that if you're going to talk about terroir, we've figured out the best thing about Fiano is that it's climatically appropriate to many different regions in Australia. Well, you can dry farm it in the Riverland. You can dry farm it in McLaren Vale pretty easily. Adelaide Hills, Clare Valley, Gippsland even. So you don't need irrigation. So you have, and you can farm it organically, which has got thick skins and it's late budding, late ripening. So you don't need too much intervention in the vineyard to protect it. So you've got something that can speak to the place without intervention in the vineyard. So then you've got naturally healthier fruit. Then you can kind of make it in the winery without too much addition, because it's it's balanced acidity, balanced alcohol, phenolic ripeness, tick.
Yeah.
So it's healthy in the winery. So then you have a really simple wine that has not been adjusted by oak, not been influenced by oak most of the time. So you have a very, very pure wine as far as there's been nothing done to it throughout the whole winemaking process. And it can grow in all different regions of Australia successfully. And you take it around the world, you pour it through, look, that is yummy. And it's been known to make absolutely outstanding wine. So you've got all of the boxes ticked. And what I really appreciate, what I would like the world to appreciate, is that there is no other New World country that is championing Italian grape varieties or non-Francophile grape varieties as well as we are in Australia.
Yeah, okay.
And Fiano's our kind of North Star in that aspect, because we've already changed the cultural minds here for the variety.
Yeah.
So that's why I think we can use Fiano to go around the world and talk about this is the future of the Australian wine industry, because it works in every single different region successfully for the most part. And, there's no one else kind of really championing it as well.
And because of the lack of irrigation, it can give you a true sense of place, as opposed to something that may be like an irrigated Shiraz or something like that.
I think, pretty much, yeah. It's definitely a big key factor. I think the sustainability aspect of it is probably the most important thing there, because, there are other great appellated regions that have irrigation. as well. Like,
Oh, there are?
There are, absolutely. They've only recently introduced them as well.
Ooh.
It's a very new thing.
Irrigation in AOC.
Yes.
Oh.
So, like in some parts of Spain, they have to get a call from the government to tell them that they can irrigate, because they've gone like, we've checked the weather, we've checked the rain that you've had over the winter. It looks like it's going to be pretty tough, boys and girls. Get out there and
Looks like it's going to be pretty tough, boys.
Turn on the taps.
Yeah.
Like,
oh, wow. Okay.
So there is that kind of level of restriction.
Shit.
But then you've got the Alsace, which is like irrigation's legal, and they have very drought-like conditions throughout summer.
They really do.
Hot, dry.
Yeah.
Very altitude. Also, you get some really hot sunny days, which is why the Pinot Noir is so ripe.
Alsace has an average rainfall of 700 mil of rain a year.
Which is
in Alsace, which is really dry.
Yeah, which is pretty dry.
Super dry for Europe.
And, I'm sure the guys in the Riverland are just like, fuck, I want that. I want 700. Yeah, I was like, I got 250.
Yeah, Jesus.
So I think that definitely tells a bit more of a truer story. But, I can't discredit some other different regions that do that. But it definitely helps with the narrative that it grows here without too much help.
Yeah, cool.
So that's what we don't like. That's the problem that we have in Australia. We don't have a native grape.
Yeah.
If we did, that's what we'd be championing.
Yeah, 100%.
But unfortunately, that's just the thing that we don't have. So we're having to reverse engineer it.
Yeah, we do have a plant which is nicknamed native grape, but it is not a grape. You can't make wine out of it either.
I'd like to see it.
Mike Benny, I'm pretty sure, tried.
Yeah, I'm sure he inoculated the hell out of him or something, and gave it a hand, and he was just like, nah.
It just wasn't working. Because, it's not Vitis vinifera. It's not part of that species.
It's not part of the Vitis species family.
No, close. Not even close.
Yeah, because we've got different Vitis species that you can make wine from, and they're very weird.
Yeah.
Like Lambrusco is probably the most famous one.
Oh, right. Yeah, true. That's not vinifera.
It's not, vinifera it's part of the Vitis family. Vinifera is a different species within that family. And Lambrusco is one, and there's a whole bunch of other ones. And then there's Vitis americana as well, which is American native grapes. And then there's hybrids and stuff like that. I need to brush up on my Wissett stuff for that, because it's fucking complicated.
Yeah.
Very nerdy. It's cool.
I was like, you're doing that for Wissett.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, well, we got one final thing that I want to get your opinion on before we sign off for the day. So you need to chug that. Sorry.
Oh, great. Oh,
well,
what a shame.
Yeah, I know. What a terrible time. Because we are releasing a new product very, very soon. And part of the reason that I've obviously got Noah on here is for his wine expertise, which may be a bit of a clue as to what this new product is and or will be. So, as the age-old, I don't know, is it now like a ritual at Unico, blind wine tasting?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, no, it's part of our DNA. And we were doing it before we even did it on the YouTube channel. It was like, also wine for the people.
Wine for the people. I'll put it in the description for everyone.
But we ages ago we were doing we used to have Friday and Saturday lunch wines, and we did auctions and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I remember Saturdays were a big one because this is well back in the day before we kind of became a little pretty large. Brendan Law used to cook lunch for us during the cellar door. We were working on Saturdays. They cooked lunch. We had a bottle of wine. It was great. It was fucking awesome.
Yeah.
So we'd always play blind wine tasting and guess the wine.
Guess the wine. Yeah,
which is sick.
Which I think is actually the best way to drink wine. Drink it first, see what you think of it, then have someone tell you about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually the way you should taste everything in life. You should be like, don't tell me what it is unless...
Is that a pro for plain packaging for wine?
Oh, no, I don't think so. I mean, well, maybe actually.
Maybe it's under it, yeah.
Maybe. I mean,
I really hope
I also just don't think that plain packaging is a good idea. I think it removes the identity of wine.
Yeah. I think for certain things, definitely, but for
sure.
For booze, which, has a bit more of a cultural impact, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And I think if we put wine in plain packaging, we're dismissing 3,500 years worth of Western culture.
Yeah.
When we do that.
Yeah, and also killing a lot of graphic design careers as well.
Yeah, exactly. And so please don't.
It's the creative industries.
Yeah, please don't kill the graphic designers. That won't be good. But we've got this really fun thing in front of us. And basically, I want to get your tasting notes. And I want to understand, while you do this, how do you taste wine properly, quote unquote, in your mind? How do you go about tasting? Now, I know you might say, there's actually no proper way to taste wine. I get that. I understand. Yeah. But from your perspective, what's the way that you taste something?
Well, I've been beaten down by the industry now doing Wissett. It's this is the structured, rigorous way of actually tasting wine.
For sure.
That people do. So, like, first of all, you identify the color.
Red.
Yeah, well, in the prescriptive setting, you'd say pale ruby.
Oh my days! Oh my days!
Pale ruby.
Oh Jesus!
And then, so like, you look at it and you go, and it's very clear.
Yep.
There's no obvious haze, things like that. In a proper setting, you just go, oh wow, look at that color, that's nice.
Yeah.
And then you smell it and you go, just think about what you potentially could link it to.
Right.
So I'm getting a lot of.
So how does that work for you? Like, do you think about memories where you've smelled the same thing? Or do you picture it in your head, as in like the image of the thing you're smelling?
I've broken through the wall, and now I'm just like trying to smell what wine that this was like that I've had before. So there is a memory link.
Okay, yeah.
So now because I'm so focused on that kind of wine aspect, I think of wine as wine and try to go, this is like that, so it could be this from there. And the things that remind me of this.
Right. Okay.
Since this is a spirit intervened wine.
Yes.
So I kind of just gone, fuck it. You can do whatever you want. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So like, I guess like smelling this, I'm just like, like first of all, I'm thinking about like aromatic intensity.
Okay.
And this, in the prescriptive setting would be classified as pronounced because you can
pronounced.
Yeah,
oh my god.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, it's wild. But yeah, this like so aromatic.
Yeah, super aromatic. But for me, like, we've had a few people on who've talked about this idea of emotional tasting. So bringing your sense of identity to tasting and linking it firmly to an emotional memory that you have,
this
which is based off of the guys at Cantina OK.
Yeah.
And Bar Planet. And so that's how they'd actually name the mezcals on the back bar or name the gins. They don't show labels. They literally write what they feel it is. So I'm asking, A, what do you think? I was about to say clinically. I was like, what do you think technically?
Yeah.
And then is there like an emotion that it's linked to?
Well, so this is definitely pretty aromatized. There's plenty of like bitter and aromatic I guess species of plant in here.
Yep.
And my mum is a herbal medicine sales rep.
Yeah.
So she sold a lot of like interesting Eastern medicines like as I was growing up, and there was one particular product she sold which was a cough syrup that was loaded with like all of these different it's like gentian root and all of these aniseed things and all of this stuff that's like natural stuff that has a lot of positive health benefits. Yeah. That when I was sick, I had to just like shot. So that's what this smells like. This smells like me being sick.
This smells. Fuck. Okay, cool.
Yeah, but I also now have a positive relationship to that. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
So when I smell and taste this,
so when you drink cough syrup at nighttime, you're like,
yeah. I had like a proper fucking like infection of my sinuses and chest like a few months ago, and I was buying like 200ml bottles of this stuff that my mum sells. And just drinking it out the bottle. Yeah, whereas like I used to grimace at the look of it, and now I'm just like, no worries. And this stuff has really helped me with like with things like Fiano. Like I've tried Fiano, everything's fine
for sure. Yeah. So like this is a bitter. Just letting everybody who's watching know. We're not going to tell you what it is specifically because we're trying to get some tasting notes. Yeah. But if you do follow the Applewood Instagram, you are going to know. Yeah. To me, This smells like everything I would love in like a go-home party pack if someone gave it to me when I was 8. It's like Cotty's Red Cordial, big red cinnamon gum, and red licorice, like the raspberry licorice.
The red licorice is very... like I was getting all that raspberry red licorice kind of thing. Yeah. Mostly. There's definitely a lot of that. The juiciness behind those kind of really herbal notes is definitely pretty prominent. Yeah. I think, like, for me, I always smell those kind of herbs first. Yeah, okay. But looking past that, I'm like, there's like Allen's Red Frogs. Yeah.
It's like cherry cordial vibes.
Yeah, all that kind of thing. It is very, very juicy.
And then it's got this cinnamon, like for me, it's got this real, like, big red cinnamon clove thing.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's definitely got a very cloven spice. It's definitely got a lot of that kind of star anise feel, Chinese 5 spice, things like that. All of those kind of just like open up the herb cabinet and it's just like, 100%. Yeah,
so really cool. When you taste wine, I've seen a lot of somms and people do this fucking sucky thing. Yeah. Which is the like...
aerate it.
Yeah, really just sounds like you're smoking a bong for everyone watching.
Yeah.
Why the fuck do you do that?
So, I mean, it just breaks up the compounds, the flavor compounds a little bit further. So you integrate oxygen to that, and that kind of just breaks apart that a little bit more. And then it helps you taste a little bit better.
Alrighty, well, shall we make some bong sounds?
Oh, absolutely. I'm professional.
Okay.
Now, do you do the mouth swish? Do you swish it around your mouth like it's Listerine? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's also another thing that I do as well. Ooh. What I'm like picking up now as I taste it is a lot of that kind of chocolatey, rich, kind of vanilla-y, like honeyness to it.
Yeah,
which is really cool. There's like a honeycomb character. It's really chocolatey.
Yeah.
Alongside, it's kind of like dark chocolate dipped, like raspberries and strawberries and shit like that.
I was literally just gonna say adult cherry ripe.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah,
right.
With no coconut.
Yeah, there's no coconut involvement, but it's got this really but texturally, that's what it reminds me of.
Yeah, 100%.
It's a little hairy.
Yeah, it's just that slight bit of
fuzz,
bitter phenolic. That like almost tannic.
Yeah, it's like oily from the chocolate and then fuzzy from the coconut.
Yeah,
is kind of what I get, and that's why it makes me think of cherry ripe.
Yeah, there is a bit of coconut there as well. I'm bringing it back. I've got a coconutty vibe.
Yeah, you're gonna coconutty vibe. So how do you actually go through the steps of tasting this now? Like in terms of the flavor profile? Well, how would you describe it technically and then emotionally?
Emotionally, I'm just like, oh shit, yeah, can I get some like sparkling wine in here?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Can I get some like pet nat in here?
Oh, for real.
Like, hell yeah. Or just soda. Like, I'm a big Americano fan, and I just know this would rip in that. That's the emotional thing. I'm just like, put fizz and dilute it a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's still delicious by itself. I think this is definitely a good like pre or post dinner kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But technically, if we're looking at specific tastes, I'm like, because again, been beaten down by the industry, primary, secondary, tertiary.
Okay, that's how you break it down.
Yeah, 100%. This doesn't necessarily work in the wine aspect because primary is just fruit. Secondary is, technical stuff, which is like oak influence or winemaking influence, like malolactic fermentation. Mm-hmm. And then tertiary is generally age or oxidation as well. So if you're, it doesn't necessarily have to be old, but if you've like created a like sherry and, left it untopped up and had oxidative handling through it, that would be those flavor profiles would pop up. Yeah. But, if we're looking at primary characters, that's from anything from flowers to dried fruit, essentially.
Right. Okay.
So I'm getting like, if we're talking about it's like very complex as far as that primary characteristics, all of those kind of like purple flowers and like thyme, the menthol character as far as that herbaceous element and the fruit profile, it's all raspberry, all red cherry. There's a little bit of that kind of blueberryness to it. Even.
Okay, yeah, I feel
a little bit darker and richer. And then there is that kind of almost like dried sultana, kind of currenty aspect to it, alongside those kind of baking spices and like cloves and nutmeg and cinnamon and all that kind of thing as well. So if we're talking about it in a tasting aspect, you'd call that a very complex primary flavor profile.
Indeed.
Which is just the biggest fucking... It's stupid.
Yeah.
In a real world setting. Yeah. In the wine industry, it's a great way to help you tear apart wine and understand why they exist in that way. Yeah. But in a real world setting, don't do that shit.
Don't do that.
Table.
No, don't do that shit.
Fucking who cares? Like, unless you're with other wine people.
Yeah, even then, it's like, shut up.
Yeah.
Shut your whore mouth.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
On a secondary aspect, like, kind of doesn't necessarily work with that, but I get a little bit of that coconutty aspect, which generally would fall into American oak, but definitely no oak here. But there's even an earthiness to it, which would generally fall under that kind of tertiary area. So there's that kind of like mushroomy, earthy, kind of woody note to it. Yeah, there's like an extra savoury.
Kind of like Oloroso sherry kind of vibe. That kind of mushroominess.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. But very, very slight.
Yeah, it's small.
It's just a little like, in the back. One of my homies in the back. Yeah. Kind of thing. Making the back of the room laugh for your comedian. That's kind of the vibe. But yeah, so like all of that, and then if we're going to talk about the wine thing, we're going to talk about what we call BLIC. Balance, length, intensity, complexity.
Oh right.
So that's so those are the kind of core arguments you make into justifying if the thing tastes good.
Right.
So is it balanced? Is it flavorly intense? Mm-hmm. Is it long? Can you taste it for a long period of time? And is it complex?
It is literally all of those things.
100%.
Yeah.
So you have bang, 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 bang.
Yep.
So generally in a wine setting, you go, this is an outstanding wine.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is a Vanane.
Yes.
Or a Vino Amaro, which translates either in French or Italian to a wine bitter, which is...
Or in Germany, wine, please.
One. So good. So good. So this is going to be something that we're going to be dropping at the start of next month. This is a new product from us, which is really, really exciting. So thank you for tasting it through with me and giving me some tasting notes.
Yummy.
It's fucking fun. It's really, really good. But I've got one final question before we wrap up. And it's a bit of a shady question.
I like shady questions.
So the question is this. Sorry, I'm going to add some sparkling wine and wash out my glass too.
Sparkling water.
Sparkling water. Oh, yeah.
It's peach flavoured sparkling water.
Yum yums. So if there's one thing that you could remove from the wine industry tomorrow and it'd be gone, no one would remember it was there, what would that one thing be? And that can be like a specific wine, or it can be like a behavior, or it can be a presupposition or a myth. What would that one thing be?
Gatekeeping.
What do you mean?
Like people judging somebody for not knowing how to taste wine. And that's the problem we have with wine, is that people are really intimidated by it.
Right. Okay.
Because, if you go to a tasting room setup, so imagine this is your first interaction with wine. You go to a cellar door, you walk up to the counter, you have the glass in front of you, it's like, hey, these are the wines we're going to go through today. And you've never tasted wine before. It's like, what the fuck is that? 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 And then the person maybe behind the tasting bar is just like, well, I'm not going to be able to sell to you, so why would I invest my time in educating?
Yeah, for sure.
So that is a major thing and that's not necessarily pointing shit at cellar door stuff, but that's just an example of people gatekeeping. And that's also in tasting. I guess like even at like a barbecue where maybe someone's brought a really nice bottle of wine and there's a few glasses flying around and pouring it out for somebody, and someone's just like, yes, it's good. And then they just go, well, I'm not going to give you another glass or anything like that because you clearly don't appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, how do we get that person to appreciate it? That's the most important thing. But there's a lot of gatekeeping. There is a lot of prescribed knowledge. There's a lot of just like, if you don't know this, you're not tall enough to ride. Kind of vibe.
Yeah.
So I think that's a major thing. It's massively apparent in multiple parts of the industry. I've experienced it personally in many different pockets, as far as like being a young person, like, asking dumb questions of like, what do you mean by Bretty? What do you mean by Mousy? Or, like I've been, or, just being judged for working for a particular company.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you work for that fucking producer? Fuck you, you suck. It's like, well, I'm here to try your wine, please, sir. Or lady, sir. I don't know why I was trying to be stupid. But like there is a lot of judgment in particular parts of in all the parts of the industry as well. And I think it's just like the people being judged for not knowing things. Yeah, for sure. It's like I would rather foster an element of like getting more people included in wine, because at the moment we don't have enough young people excited about wine because we have this like intimidating gatekeeping aspect of the industry. So I think it's like, if we are able to kind of find the person who's like, I don't really get it, but I really like drinking it. Foster those people and just go, this is why you like that. Like, do you like the flavor? Do you like the sweetness? Do you like the fizz? Is that fun? Or like, why don't you like the tannin thing? Why do you like the, Beaujolais Nouveau? And the answer for that is because you're a fucking human being.
And it's fucking delicious.
Exactly.
Jesus.
So it's like things like that. So I think, being able to foster more people to get excited by wine and take away the pretense and the gatekeeping within it, I think would be great. And it's like, that's how we get the next generation of people who want to be somms or winemakers or wine sellers, people who want to represent wine businesses and sell wine, or even just avid consumers. That's what we need, a lot of those. And as we've talked about with like the sheer volume of wine that's unsold, we need more people excited about wine. So yeah, that's the main thing. It's like, don't gatekeep. Don't be a pretentious dick. Get more wine drinkers, not judge people for the fact that they don't know anything.
So if there's one thing you've taken away from today, it's don't be a dick. And I really appreciate that. That's probably where we should wrap it up.
That's my Bible.
That's my Bible. Well, don't be a dick, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Noah, thank you so much for joining me.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
My man.